Welcome back. Welcome back to episode 19 of the Two Thinking Apes. Today we have Brett White on. Brett White is the founder of Be Leaders, a company which specializes in life coaching, thought dynamics, and organizational leadership, and is the author of two books, Shift Happens, 10 Effective Thinking Skills, and the Thecuna Effect, a book about navigating the gap between your current reality and future goal. Brett has over 25 years of experience in leadership, transformational thinking, mindsets, and behavioral change. Thanks for coming on, Brett.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Thank you. The first question I'll probably ask is, how did Be Leaders start it? And maybe give a bit of a backstory about that.
Yeah, sure. About 9 years ago, sort of started as a little side project. I did my life coaching training down in Melbourne and started to share some of my learnings with my daughter, who was 16 at the time. And she was like, "Oh, wow, this stuff's amazing. They should teach this in schools. Why don't my friends know about this?" Just about, effective thinking skills. And so that kind of led me to run a few kind of workshops and trainings for her, literally for her friends at school. And we just, found a place and ran some workshops on effective thinking skills. And that kind of then just evolved. We ran a thing called the Shift Movement for a while, which then I wrote the book Shift Happens, which again is thinking skills primarily for 16 to 24-year-olds. And although they, apply to any age group, including myself. And and that just kind of it was just a little thing I was running on the side, sort of started doing a blog and just realized that it was really connecting in with what I was really passionate about. And walking and working alongside young people in particular was a real passion of mine. And actually my daughter turned 25 today. So yeah, it's 9 years ago pretty much. Yeah, so that's kind of how it all started. And that led me down a whole bunch of different experiences. At the time I was working as a pastor in a local church. And doing a lot of kind of mentoring and leadership development in the not-for-profit sort of sector. And then sort of doing that part-time and sort of running my own business in leadership development, executive coaching, consultancy, and that kind of work, which then kind of just opened up a whole bunch of different doors. And, one of probably the highlights for me over that last 9 years is I did a lot of work in Cambodia, which was quite unusual. That kind of door opened, real hunger over there for leadership development. There wasn't a lot of that kind of stuff at the time. And I ended up living there for 7 months in 2019 before COVID, and came back to Australia kind of just when the whole COVID thing started in February 2020. And I was basically writing a leadership curriculum for young people in high school in one of the poorest areas of Phnom Penh in Cambodia, with an organisation called Cambodia Children's Fund, which was sort of amazing experience. Again, just working with young people from all different sort of walks of life. So massive passion of mine to see young people empowered, I guess, and equipped. And then for me now, the business is kind of my main thing. It's my main focus, and kind of utilising that, working in the corporate sector now, running workshops and training and consultancy for businesses and companies and organizations, but then utilizing that to enable me to continue to work with young people. And so, yeah, that's kind of the very short version of my journey to now anyway.
So I know you said that you did a life coaching course. What did that involve? And is that what sort of taught you everything you tell people? Or surely something would be embedded in you as a person to be able to talk to people and get them to buy in and think effectively, really, because can you really learn how to do that?
Yeah, you can. And I think, there's a lot of life coaching courses that you can do these days. I think you can probably do one online and, in 3 hours or something. But mine was a fairly over a 2-year period, face-to-face, and lots of sort of training. So it was a really quite involved process of getting accredited. And yes, you learn a lot of kind of those core thinking skills and principles around, why we behave the way we behave. understanding, our response and our reactions, how we deal with conflict, how we're kind of wired internally, dealing with kind of fears and overcoming them, and understanding like our limiting beliefs. And so you learn, a lot of sort of key principles. But I think, as you said, for me, I've been working alongside people in people development for many, many years. It's just, something that I'm passionate about, mentoring, coming alongside people, developing people, and particularly had worked along a lot of young people. And that sort of seems to be my heart, and my passion was to give young people, the best that they can get, so that they can be the best that they can be. And it's sort of, I guess, the three big questions that always sort of revolve around what inspires and motivates me to do what I do are, who am I, why am I here, and where do I fit? And so those three kind of key areas of identity, purpose, and belonging. And I think that those things sort of underpin everything that I do. And I think that when people get that understanding of kind of who they are, embrace who they are, kind of know why they're here, have a bit of an understanding of, what's my purpose on the planet, what's the footprint that I want to leave, and where do I kind of fit in the context of that, where do I belong? And I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, and I kind of feel like a lot of those questions keep coming up, even for you guys.
I was going to ask, so you're talking to a lot, like your daughter started, so 16, that kind of young people age. At that age, obviously, people are changing constantly, but especially in that age bracket, you're kind of picking, like, for example, if you choose to go to university, you've kind of picked a direction that can change, but it's like a 3-5 year direction.
Yeah.
How do you help people, like what you said, choosing a purpose? That's such a broad like question, especially to someone that's 16, that's probably going to change as a person another 50 times.
Yeah.
How do you help someone direct them in the path that they think is the right one for them at the time? Really,
I think there's a difference between kind of purpose and career. And I think some of what you're talking about is more about, career choice, career path. And I definitely feel that the younger generations these days will have multiple career paths in their lives. Whereas I think my generation, we're kind of like stuck with kind of one or two. It's very, very different these days. Purpose, I think, is more around, it doesn't, in a sense, it shouldn't really matter where you're working or what career you are. You can still live out your purpose in those environments. And so it's more an inward kind of, this is why I'm here. This is kind of what brings me alive. These are the things that I love to do, regardless of the context. And so, I think for me, when I look back over my years, I've been involved a lot in sport as a soccer coach and soccer player. And I was working with an organization in Cambodia that basically run a whole soccer club for disadvantaged, underprivileged, and homeless young people. And again, that whole thing for me aligns with my purpose, even though, soccer coaching is very different to, say, executive coaching or consultancy in a business or working with young people. And I worked for 18 months with the Reach Foundation, which run workshops in high schools around Australia in self-development and awareness. And so, all of those things, I can still live out my purpose regardless of where I am. And I think where we get lost and stuck is when we find ourselves not being able to live out kind of how we're wired to live out and do the things that bring us alive and kind of help bring that sense of fulfillment in what we're doing. So, whether we're a lawyer or an accountant, or I know a couple of you guys are studying or finished studying, you should, in a sense, if you have an understanding of purpose, it's more around understanding yourself and how you want to be and how you want to live out and how you want to impact those people around you. And so it's less about career. Although what I do find these days is people will change career when it doesn't line up with their purpose. I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
Do you think the ideal situation is your purpose aligns with your career, or do you think in the way it is now, most people won't get that opportunity? So it's like the whole idea of you do a career to get the money or the opportunity, whatever, to do what you want in your spare time. Do you think that's just a reality we all kind of need to face?
I think one of the reasons that we're seeing people change careers so often these days is because they do get stuck, and they don't feel fulfilled. They're not aligned. It's not aligned to who they are, their values, their purpose, the footprint that they want to leave on the planet. And that's why, there's this searching, looking for how those things can align. I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, to land the job that ticks all those boxes. And even for me, I sort of feel like when I was living and working in Cambodia, I felt like all those boxes were ticked, because I was doing the things that I loved with people that, were underprivileged. And for me, that's kind of my heart. And they were young people. And so in a sense, I was living out every day what I loved, and it really brought me alive. And just looking for those things, even now, if I'm totally honest, I came back from Cambodia. I did some work with the Reach Foundation for the last kind of 18 months. And then I decided that it was time for me to sort of, take the step and go full time into running my business. And then the lockdown hit. So it's been an interesting 3 months. I kind of like thinking, was that decision a bad one? And I've felt a little bit kind of stuck in the last 3 months myself, because I feel like I'm not aligned at the moment with, what my purpose really is about. And that's partly because I'm, unable to do some of the things that I want to be able to do. And we're all probably feeling that, I think, to a certain degree.
Monday, don't worry. It's Monday. But I was gonna ask as well, how did Cambodia, how did that happen? Because I also read you did some in Pakistan, Singapore, and New Zealand as well. So how does that actually end up happening for you? If we take us back to that.
Interesting. I went to Cambodia once in 2009. We did a family trip there. We had some friends over there, and we decided we'd go visit them, have a bit of a look around, see what it was like. Our kids were quite young at the time. And if I'm totally honest, I actually hated it. I'd never been to a developing country before. I'd never really stepped out of my comfort zone of the Sutherland Shire. I'd been to, New Zealand and America and sort of those kind of places. Boy. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm in Cronulla.
Hey, here you go. I'm just down the road in Gymea. So,
oh, nice.
So it was kind of like, I hated it, but something stirred inside me. It was like, and I found myself, I went back again a year later. And then actually I connected with a local Cambodian who played soccer, and he was working with younger kind of like kids at risk. And we just, on the spur of the moment, decided I would try and bring my soccer team over from Australia. I was playing in over 35s competition at the Bonnet Bay, just for, if you know where that is, Costin. And the Mighty Bombers. And I had 14 over 35s go over to Cambodia.
Oh, you got them to go?
Yeah, got 14 of them out of sort of 17 to go. We did a 10-day trip in Phnom Penh, and we ran soccer clinics for kids at risk, sort of aged between sort of 8 and 12. And It was just an amazing experience. And then I just got connected with a whole bunch of different people, and then just, built relationships with a lot of the locals. And I've run that trip every year since, with different groups, apart from the last 2 years because of COVID. But yeah, we run 7 trips to soccer trips to Cambodia, where I've taken up teams up to, I think 27 was the biggest number I took over. And we ran these soccer clinics, and then we'd organise a soccer tournament while we were there, and we'd get a couple of local teams and we'd play in a soccer tournament and just have a lot of fun and enjoy the culture. And I just fell in love with the place, fell in love with the people. And it's just kind of, then I got to know started running leadership workshops there, sort of free for locals, and did some training. And then I just got connected to a whole bunch of different people. And over time, I was running some leadership training for Cambodia Children's Fund, which is a big NGO, doing amazing work, started by an Australian guy, Scott Neeson. They do an incredible work in the poorest area of Phnom Penh. got to do some work with them, and eventually they invited me to come over, which is when I lived there, to basically on a contract to develop a leadership curriculum for their high school students. And so we just, that's kind of like how that all happened. It was certainly not something I thought I'd ever do. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, there's no way in the world.
I'm going to say the logistics of getting a 14-man over 35
That's what I was thinking. I was still stuck on that.
Because we played soccer for Balmain because all the guys that we were friends with were from over that way. And like you could barely get 12 guys to get to the park on Saturday.
Yeah, maybe it was. I don't know. I think when because a lot of people hadn't gone before, and it was kind of like this exciting, you know. But yeah, logistically on the ground, because it was only my third or fourth time in Cambodia, so I sort of knew a little bit of where to go and the right places to be at, and found a good hotel that looked after us. In fact, I've gone back to that same hotel every time I've been because they've really looked after the teams, and not trying to make the trip so that. We're not staying in 5-star hotels. We want to stay in something that's nice and comfortable, but it's earthy and it's locally run. It's owned by locals. And then the more I went, obviously I was traveling there 3 or 4 times a year. I learned a bit of the language. I got to know the people and the culture and where to go and what to do. And that just made the logistics so much easier and organising things like transport and where we're going to play soccer and coordinating with the different sort of organisations that we were working with while we were there. But it's a lot of fun. And we do bring some joy to these young kids, but I think in hindsight, the biggest impact is on the people I take from Australia. They're the ones that actually come away with the value and the impact and the transformation, because most of them have never experienced poverty like that. And even though we do bring a smile to these kids' face and we take soccer shirts over and we have a lot of fun and all of that, and they love it, I think the lasting impact is actually on the people that come over and experience it.
Yeah, I can imagine. You mentioned you're a pastor.
Yep.
Religion play a big role in the stuff you teach and tell people leadership-wise, and did that play a big role for you in finding out, or pretty much just finding that this was what your calling was, really? Did it make life coaching training easier for you as well?
In some ways, it made it easier because, I guess as a pastor, if you sort of take the religious faith element out of it, you're caring for people.
It's like a guide.
That's right. And so, obviously it's driven by my Christian faith, but I think in that ways it made it easier. But I also found initially I felt quite uncomfortable being in that kind of life coaching environment because it was so not anti-religion, but like just something I just never experienced before. And so in some ways it was really challenging for me being in that environment. And I don't obviously, I don't preach and talk about that stuff in the context when I'm running workshops or doing training or consultancy or coaching. But our spirituality is such a critical part of who we are, regardless of where that kind of fits. And so often it comes up in conversation because there is a spiritual element to everybody that people are curious about. And I think utilizing and having that experience has been helpful. And it's interesting, I've done a lot of work with people from other religions. For example, you're talking about Pakistan. I mean, that was just an amazing opportunity. Again, it was all done online. But there's a lady, Cedia, that I got to know through LinkedIn, and she was looking at the work I was doing in Cambodia with this kind of soccer organization called HFCA. And they were running all this soccer training and teams and competitions for young people at risk. And she started the first women's football club in Pakistan. And, you could imagine in that culture, that's a big thing in their culture. And so she reached out to me and said, would I run some training around resilience and mindset? Because I have worked a bit in the sporting realm around kind of like, that kind of mindset sort of coaching for athletes. And so, I ran a whole bunch of training for her players and coaches at her football club, which is pretty cool.
So cool.
All online. So yeah, those experiences and opportunities have just kind of opened up for me. And I guess just being willing to say yes. I'm not driven by the dollar, which I think sometimes goes against me, because I do a lot for nothing, because I love it if it's meaningful and it connects with my purpose. And I think one of the things about running my own business is that I can, make money in the kind of corporate world, which helps then support me to be able to give back, have that social impact, and invest into emerging leaders in developing countries around the world, which is, I guess, what I love to do. And it's not that I don't love the corporate work. I really do. And I've got to know and made some really good friends in that sector. But I kind of feel like it's kind of like that's the means to an end. If I was only doing that, it would not be ticking the boxes for me and really connecting with my purpose. But yeah, that's a 50-year plus kind of journey, I think, to get to that point. And I'm still on that journey, and I'm still discovering who I am, why I'm here, and where I fit. I don't think that ever ends. I wish it did.
It seems like once you took that first leap, all these doors started opening for you with opportunities. The thing that I always find the most interesting when we talk to people is like, what compels you to take that initial leap, and that, like, because there's a lot of fear with that, I'm guessing, and like uncertainty. But once you do it, because there's also like, it might not work, but it seems like it's working, and all these other amazing experiences you've had. So was there a particular moment where you kind of realized like, this is the leap, that kind of thing? And what was going through your head in that moment? Because these are the things that I really want to learn for my own self, going forward in my life, kind of thing.
I think one of the problems that we have, particularly in a kind of like a Western sort of westernized culture, where it is really about, trying to climb the ladder or earn the money or get the house and, tick all those kind of boxes, I think.
Material boxes.
Yeah. And none of them are bad things by any means. And they're good things to want to have and go after. But I think they're not, at the end of the day, the things that actually matter most. And I think, growing up, I just think we can easily get sidetracked into pursuing those things. So if something comes up that's kind of like a little bit left of center, and there's a stirring in you, there's something about that I can just, we wrestle with that because it won't tick all those other boxes. And I think pursuing dreams is both heartbreaking and empowering all at the same time. You spoke about the book I wrote called The Thecuna Effect, which is all about, what do you do in that space where your dreams are here and your current reality is here, and it feels like they're so far apart. And I just interviewed a whole stack of people from around the world, including a bunch of people in Cambodia, about, how do you walk through that gap, where your dreams and reality just kind of feel miles apart. And I think, that's the hard part, because we dull our dreams down and we just go, we'll just tick these boxes and pursue this because it's kind of easier and it fits with the culture and society. But I do feel that in doing that, we often miss out. And so for me, to kind of answer your question, even going to Cambodia, so I'm a very certainty-driven person in the I love my certainty. Yeah, I love, and I think that's why I hated the first experience in Cambodia, because it was so like random and uncertain, and the culture there is kind of all over, and the traffic is, just the traffic is so, intense. That there's no kind of structure, and I love my certainty, and so I think you have to make decisions to actually choose to step out of that. And going to Cambodia for me initially was stepping way outside my comfort zone, and then living there was like, do I want to do this? It's like, all the creature comforts that I get used to in my own environment, and then stepping into a very, kind of random, everything's kind of different every day, storms and traffic and the people and everything is crazily different. But if I hadn't done it, I think I would have missed out on probably one of the most significant experiences of my life. So I think sometimes we just have to say yes and then work out how later.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, because I think we get stuck in, we need to know the how before we say yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that probably stopped me doing a whole bunch of different things over the years.
I relate to that, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to say, do you think there's a way to do the uncertainty with a level of certainty, or is this me trying to make a cop out to try and find a middle?
Oh, if you're anything like me, definitely yes. I think there is, I guess when I look back, even that first, when I took 14 guys to Cambodia, there was a lot of uncertainty, but I made sure, I had the things that mattered and that were important in place, like knew where we were staying and it was a good place and, it was safe and all, so you can, because we, even though I'm very certainty driven, I still need that sense of variety and spontaneity and adventure and challenge. Otherwise I just get bored, right? We all would. But I kind of need that, what you were saying, I need that variety and adventure and spontaneity inside the context of certainty.
Yeah.
And just creating ways for that to happen is really important. So creating routine, working out, what are your anchor points in your life? And I think as long as those anchor points stay strong, then that then gives you the freedom to be able to step out of your comfort zone. Because we all know, we all hear the sayings that, life doesn't happen inside our comfort zone. It happens when we step out, right? And so why don't we step out of our comfort zone? Because it scares the crap out of us, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was supposed to go on exchange. Was COVID 2019 or 2020?
2020 at the start of 2020.
Yeah. Well, I was meant to go 6 months overseas, July 2020. Planned it all, looking forward to it. COVID, didn't get to do it.
Yeah.
Then I thought, okay, I'll go this year. Still didn't get to do it. I got a job that starts in February. So I'm like, all right, maybe January. We'll see. It's not going to be the same, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So now the whole idea for me is like, I really want to go and just travel for a prolonged period of time. But now I have a job starting in February. You get 4 weeks leave. Probably 2 weeks will need to be taken in Christmas. So that's the toss up I'm with now. But then I think to myself, take the job, get the experience, and then you can always take leave, like leave without pay, blah, 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 wait for COVID to clear up. So
just work for 5 years, accumulate it all and take a 10-week holiday.
Well, yeah, you can do that too. But that's why I was asking you the question of the certainty with the box. Cause like I keep my job. I want the best of everything all the time. Yeah. Everyone does.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's kind of why I was asking you that question in relation to that kind of context, that the conversation going on in my head.
Yeah.
Because there's always a part of me that's like, yeah, just quit everything and just go travel.
Yeah. What do you think is going to add more value and create more transformational moments for you? Is an employment career or cultural global experience?
Obviously, cultural global experience. I'd be lying if I said the other one, but I do think both are important at the end of the day.
Yeah, like I don't disagree with you, and I don't think it's wrong and bad to kind of have a career and have aspirations to be the best that you could be in a particular career either. I mean, it would be interesting to look at where you are in sort of 10, 15 years time, as if you're still in the same career, because I think, a lot of people at your age, they sort of dive into a career, or they even go to uni and study something and then find at the end of their 4 years of uni, they go, I don't think I want to do that anymore. And
one of our friends is like that.
Yeah. Then they bounce into something totally different. And I think all those things are okay. I think there's an expectation that we think the world has on us as, particularly say in Australia, to tickle those boxes, that by a certain time, your parents' generation, were saying, by the time I was, 21, I'd kind of had my whole life planned out. I had my career, I was getting married. I was going to have kids. Like, it was kind of like all these things that happen. Whereas I think having the freedom to meander your way around that and try different things and experience different things and get a job, work for a while, see how that goes, but not to feel like you need to, beat yourself up if after 6 to 12 months you go, I want to take a break from there and I want to travel for a while. I want to try this. I think when we try different things, it actually is what helps us to know where we want to be and what we want to do and who we want to be and our purpose, because we realize that, okay, that's not it, but there were these elements that I loved. And I suppose that would be sort of my story in one way. I look at my daughter, for example, and she's dabbled in a whole bunch of different things, and she's worked in the welfare, she's worked with kids, she's worked in cafes, and then she decided to go and do her music degree, which she'll finish at the end of this year. And so she's 25, and in some ways my generation would go, oh, that's we would never have done that. I left school at end of year 10, started an apprenticeship on the Monday following, and kind of felt like you had your whole plan planned out. But I don't know, I just think these days, to have the freedom to be able to explore and experiment and experience different things will help shape you guys. And look at my daughter, and I encourage her journey of exploring and trying and experimenting and traveling. She lived in England for a year, and I think that's all just added incredible value to who she is as a person. And it doesn't mean that there's still not questions and doubts and struggles, but I do think it helps to answer some of those big questions of who am I, why am I here, and where do I fit.
Do you think if someone is bored in their career or just bored, it's time to change? Or just work at it?
I guess it depends on why the boredom's there. If they are disengaged and unfulfilled in their workspace, I would definitely say you need to create a change, because we spend a lot of time at work. And if at work is not energizing us and empowering us and ticking the box somehow that's connected to our purpose and even that sense of belonging, life's too short to stay in a place that is unfulfilling. And I think one of the keys in that is actually understanding the things that you do naturally well. So, whether that's communication, or whether that's building teams, or whether that's very task orientated or analytical. There's a whole bunch of obviously different sort of strengths that we have and bring to the table. Is that, am I utilizing, my strengths, my natural talents, what I do well every day? Because when I'm doing that is when I'll tend to feel more energized and more engaged and less bored in a sense. And so, if someone is just going through the motions, they're disengaged, they're watching their clock, they're unenthused, they're unmotivated, they're disconnected and bored, then I don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
Can I ask on that? Generally, when you start a job, you're at the bottom of the rung anyway. So you're most likely going to be doing that stuff. Wouldn't that be in every initial job unless you start your own business or you're doing some other niche thing?
Absolutely. And I think, you've got to take that into consideration. Are you bored because of that reason? I'm a first year apprentice, and my son, he's a Sparky apprentice. He's in his 4th year now. But, when he first started, he was at the bottom. He was the one crawling through the roof and, pulling the wires through the hard places and getting dirty. And, as he's progressed, and now he has another apprentice doing that. Now he could say, I'm bored doing the same thing all the time, getting dirty, blah, 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 blah. But in the bigger picture, that's working its way towards something else, right? I think that's a different kind of boredom.
Okay.
But you are right. I mean, in every job, particularly, I have quite a number of clients in the corporate world, lawyer firms, accounting firms, big kind of not-for-profits. And yeah, the people who start in, they're doing the work that no one else wants to do, right? But it's for a purpose, and you're learning as you go, and it's actually, moving you towards maybe where you want to be. And so I guess having that perspective is really important. But if you've kind of been in a job for a while and you've been there, done, that's right, and you find yourself bored and disconnected and unmotivated and disengaged. I mean, it's interesting. It's kind of off the topic a little bit, but the Gallup, who just did a whole bunch of global surveys around the world about what they call employee engagement. Employee engagement is, people love what they do, enjoy who they do it with, and do it well. That's my summary. And I do a lot of training in the corporate space around employee engagement. So in Australia, we are at an all-time low of 20%, which means only 20% of employees are actively engaged in their work and their workplace. So 80% are either non-engaged or disengaged. I think COVID's probably played a role in that because of online remote work. So people aren't connected like they used to be. But it's interesting. I just think a lot of people are in jobs that they don't really like because it pays the bills. And sometimes we have to walk that path because we have to pay the bills.
That's a depressing thought.
Yeah, it is, but
it's a reality.
It is, sometimes it is a reality. But people get stuck in that because they think this is my only option. And I don't believe that that's true. I believe that we can create options for ourselves so that we are engaged in work that does bring us alive, that does connect somehow with our purpose and who we are and give us a sense of belonging. I mean, if you're working in an organization where the culture is horrible, and you don't enjoy turning up to work every day and you have conflict with your managers or whatever, it's just going to suck the life out of you. And I think life's too short. So find something else, do something else, create an opportunity, talk to someone, get some advice. I just think that we are, in a sense, the ones that have that power to create the future that we want. But we often don't, because the certainty thing, the fear of, stepping out or resigning or changing careers, that fear is bigger and more motivating than staying. So we just find we stay. And we stay in bad jobs, we stay in bad relationships, we stay in bad circumstances because that's easier and less fearful than stepping out and exploring and experiencing and trying something different, which I think is kind of sad in some ways.
Yeah, it's very depressing when you say it like that.
Yeah.
Can I ask, why do you think the generation now has less career satisfaction than previously? Because you could say a lot of the jobs are better, I guess, because there isn't as much factory work kind of thing.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
I reckon. So
in Australia,
working with a lot of young people, and I guess the last 18 months working with some incredible young people at the Reach Foundation. I reckon partly it's because they want to work in a place that they feel like they're a part of changing the world. And, maybe that in sometimes can feel a little bit idealistic, but at the same time, I think everybody would love that. But I think, the younger generation are really passionate about leaving a positive footprint on the planet, whether that's, in climate change, or whether it's in areas of racism or human rights, or it could be a thousand different kind of great causes that energize us. I think that generally young people, they want to be a part of an organization where they feel like they are contributing to a bigger picture of creating a better place. And so when they don't find that, there's a misalignment of their values or what's important to them, they move on, try and find somewhere else. I don't know if that kind of makes sense from where
I
you
can relate
sit.
to that.
Yeah.
No, I can relate to that.
The jobs that I've had at uni, the ones that I felt most fulfilled in, anti-slavery Australia, there's a very clear connection.
Yep.
Disability support worker, there's a very clear connection.
Yep.
So they're the work where I can see it's like so clear.
Yeah.
And
I just think that's more and more. I think because of the education, because of we are globally connected. It's a different world that we live in than it was when I was 20 years old. That's for sure. And so back then you sort of just got a job because you earn some money and buy your house and get married and have kids and live happily ever after. I just think we miss a whole significant part of who we are in that journey, and of that sort of self-discovery and understanding who we are and connecting with purpose that brings us alive. And that path, if I'm honest, that path of discovering who we are and why we're here and where we fit can be really frustrating and hard and disempowering, because it sometimes feels like the culture that we're in is almost like trying to stifle that and pigeonhole us and put us in where we need to go, tell us what to do. And I think sometimes, saying, no, I want to pursue this because it connects with my passion. It gives me energy and it brings me alive. It's not going to earn me a lot of money, but I'm okay with that, if that makes sense. So I do think it's a little bit, I think it's becoming more and more, but I do think it's a little bit against the grain. It's against the flow of what is expected and what is thought to be what you should do and what's the norm, if that makes sense. But I think definitely I find young people are much more, they want to be a part of something that's not just giving them a paycheck, that's not just a nice environment to work in, that's actually connecting with who they are and why they're here and giving them a sense of belonging. And belonging is it's not just about, having kind of people that you get on with and having friends. It's actually people that you get on with and having friends that are also aligned with that purpose. So you're kind of like connecting in that purpose with a group of people that are also passionate about that. That's where you kind of get that real deep sense, I guess, of belonging, is when there's an alignment around what you're passionate about and what you're trying to do, and creating the change that you can create, whether it's just in the life of one person or in the life of the world. I think that's what young people are looking for. And when organizations and companies provide it, this is part of the reason why the social impact element of the corporate world is all of a sudden growing. Every organization, or not every organization, but it's becoming a lot more popular that we want to make sure that we have a social impact element, component, arm, department of our company and organization, because that's what's driving people, and young people, they want to be connected to that stuff. They don't just want to turn up and do a job, get paid and go home. They want to be a part of something that is more significant, more empowering, and there's a bigger picture. And even though it might be a small part, they actually feel that they're a part of something that's creating some transformation and change in the world.
So I'm in construction, so because that's why I like my job, because it's like, you can physically see how you're contributing to society by the buildings you build. So
yeah, absolutely. And you can see the end result too. Like there's a satisfaction in completion. There's a satisfaction in creating a great environment or a home or a facility. And as I said, like if that's the way you're wired and that's what kind of brings you alive, then sounds like it's ticking the right boxes.
Well, it depends on the project as well. I know, like the last one I did was Macquarie University, and that was good because it's university building. It's a new graduation hall, food court, new landscaping. Like it was going to be used for a generation, really. So that felt really good finishing that, because it's like, oh, this is an education institution. I helped build it, and it's going to be here and leave its mark. And who knows who could go through that and who it would help.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
There's other jobs where it's like you're just building a hotel or apartment blocks for some rich developer to make a buck, where it's like
totally
the opposite.
different.
So it's but
yeah. So it's finding I guess as as you get older and pursue different things, is for me it's about trying to do the other things more. Trying to align to, whether it's in the construction industry, align yourself to the things that you're actually going to feel like you're contributing to a bigger picture, because that's what's going to bring you a greater and deeper sense of fulfillment, and kind of bring you alive, and it kind of excites you in that. And I think sometimes when you get to do what you do well, whether that's a trade, whether it's a skill, whether it's a conversation, when you get that opportunity to do what you do well, that is also the place where we'll kind of get that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction, because it's like I said before, if you tick the boxes of I love what I do, I enjoy who I do it with, and I do it well, that's where you're that's where you're going to be the happiest and most fulfilled in that work kind of career space, for sure.
Can I change the topic a bit? I want to know what motivated you to write a book and how that process actually happened.
Oh, it's funny actually, because I've written a couple of books. They're both pretty short, because I think if I was going to read a book, I'd want to read a book that's about this big. And I used an app called, I think it's called Blinkist or something, and they do all the hard work for you. They take out the 10% of great stuff from the book, so you only have to read 10%, because I'm not a great reader. So both of my books are quite short, in the sense that I've just kind of like got in them what I felt needed to be said without anything else. And so, the first book just came about because I wanted it to be a resource for young people. So if I was running a workshop, I was having a conversation with a young person, and we're talking about thinking skills, whether it be mindset or overcoming fear or positive thinking, or, understanding kind of meaning and focus, a whole bunch of different principles. I just kind of like penned them down, and one thing kind of led to another, and I eventually kind of got it edited and published it. And kind of cool, that book actually got published in Khmer language, which is the Cambodian language, and they used it in Cambodia as a resource for young people in the high schools that I was working in. So that was pretty cool.
That's very cool. The next thing I was going to ask you is, in terms of we touched on it before, the idea of that gap when you spoke to all those people in the Thecuna effect. What would you say the key things to get out of that from speaking to all those people were, so we can apply it in our lives, really, and for people listening?
I think I think some, in some ways are reflected back over the last, so I published that book at the start of 2020, before we went into COVID. But in some ways, the lacuna it's a Latin word that means an unfilled space or gap. And I think COVID has forced pretty much all of us, in a sense, into some kind of lacuna, where, we've had dreams or hopes or aspirations that we haven't been able to fulfill or live out, whether that's doing, working overseas like you were going to do an exchange. So what do you do in that space? And I think what I've found probably generally is people either stop dreaming or they dull down their dream, and that then helps them deal with a easier reality, if that makes sense. A lot of people stop dreaming, stop believing for better things, stop believing for their goals and dreams. But I think it's really important that in that space we continue to dream. And it's about maybe dreaming differently. And it's, it's a longer conversation than we probably have here. But when people are in that space, I would say the key things that out of all the different people that I interviewed, the commonalities were probably some kind of meditation, whether that's getting out in nature, whether it's meditation or yoga or prayer, that seemed to be, from a whole range of different people, seemed to be a common theme that helped people get through that. Looking after yourself physically. So that was another thing, whether that be exercise, eating well, that kind of stuff. And being vulnerable and talking to someone. So having someone that you can talk to, a friend, a mentor, a coach, they probably were the three key things that everybody kind of said in some way, shape or form that helped them navigate that sort of space. But for some people, it's a very dark season. And, we talk about identity, purpose and belonging. And in that space where, you've either felt disappointed or let down, or, you've missed out, or, you haven't been able to achieve the dream or the goal, is where our identity and our purpose and belonging seems to be really threatened. And, we question and we doubt and we beat ourselves up. And for some people, it can be a very, very dark. One of the things that I found really challenging but also really insightful was the emotion that people and the words that people used to describe how they felt in that season when they were really kind of stuck in the depths of that gap. Just the level of despair and heartache and depression and sadness and anger. And for some, it's a really hard season. But we all walk through them. We will all face those experiences in some way, shape or form. Some bigger and deeper and longer than others. And being able to navigate that, I think, when our identity in particular, who we are, is threatened a lot by what's going on around us, and having some tools and people around us to actually walk through that with is absolutely critical. And I just think it's important that we dream again and we continue to dream, because dreams keep us alive. They give us something to work towards. They inspire us, they motivate us, they encourage us. Some of the dreams we have maybe are too big and lofty. My dream was that I'd be a famous author. And, I think I sold 15 books and gave 1,000 away. You know what I mean? Like, so I haven't.
You're on the way, but
that's right. I'm on the way. But you know what I mean? Like, I think some people might have dreams of being, the next, Lionel Messi soccer player, and they don't have the skills to do it. So it's an unrealistic dream, right? That doesn't mean it's about changing your dreams, and it's about readjusting. But instead of stopping and not dreaming anymore and giving up and just resigning to life and plodding through life and, in a sense, just maintaining, to me, it's just not an option. And I encourage everybody who's listening, and you guys, just keep dreaming, keep working out how you can work through the setbacks and the disappointments, build resilience. I think one of the challenges for young people today, particularly in a country like Australia, is they've never really had to be resilient. And I think COVID's maybe has taught some levels of resilience, but I do think that, my parents' generation and my generation's probably just the same. We didn't suffer in any way, shape or form. We didn't go through a world war. We didn't go through a depression. So I think just some tools around building resilience for young people is massive, because life will kick you in the face. You're going to get setbacks. You're going to get disappointed. I think it's Mark Twain. He says, the two things that shape us are beauty and affliction. The great, amazing times and the hard crap, they're the things that shape who we are the most. We tend to want to avoid the hard stuff, the disappointments, the letdowns, the heartaches, the struggles, the mistakes, the failures. But ultimately, they're actually the things that shape us more than anything else to be the people that I believe that we can be.
I remember reading a book and it said the like key to living is to experience every color of the human emotion, something like that. That always stuck with me. It kind of links to that.
Yeah, it's very true, I think. But we tend to, as human beings, we try to avoid pain at all costs, right?
It's in our nature.
Yeah, that's right. So we will make decisions constantly. I mean, there's a life coaching principle that talks about pleasure and pain, and we, as human beings, we'll avoid pain at all costs. So we're talking about, changing career. We look at that and go, oh, there's possible pain there. I could be unemployed. I could, not get another job. I could get a job that I hate even more than this one. And so because there's this view of possible pain, we withdraw from making that decision and kind of sit and stay where we are and stay stuck. But my experience would tell me that it's the hard stuff, it's the challenges, it's the setbacks, it's the disappointments, and it's even the grief that if we embrace it and wrestle with it and walk with it, it actually empowers us and shapes us to be the best that we can be, which is all about how we impact the people around us. And that's a constant journey, I think.
I think that's a good point to wrap
That's
it
a
up.
good end point there. Very deep stuff.
It was very deep, wasn't it?
Brett. That was good.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Heaps good to chat.
Appreciate the time.
Appreciate you
Thank
guys.
you, Brett.
Thank you very much. Have a good day or weekend, actually. It's the weekend. How good.
It is the weekend.
Easy. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good weekend. Enjoy the beaches in the Shire.
Will do.
Thank you, Brett.